This meeting is called to order at 1 p.m. on Tuesday, October 19th, 2010. We'll start with the invocation and pledge of allegiance, led by Jonathan Burkey from Grace Lutheran Church.
Let us pray. Most gracious and holy God, we thank you for the day you've blessed us with this day, and we pray that you'd be with in all that we say and do. May you guide this meeting as they prepare to decide on the business and at hand. May you send your Holy Spirit that it may be peaceful, that all may take place, and it may also be efficient and effective. Lord, we pray that for your constant guidance in all we say and do in this life. Send your Son Jesus to God to be among us, to be part of our lives, that we may know him. Father, we thank you for all that you give us. In your name we pray. Amen. We now continue with a pledge to the flag. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Jonathan. Any actions to be taken in report in closed session? Nope. The
board did approve a potential offer to sell property. However, we haven't received a commitment from the other side yet, and when we do, I will put that sale on the record with regard to the Western Farmlands.
All right, thank you. Approval of agenda. Items.
Second.
First and a second.
I have one I need. Nope, I'm all right.
Okay, please vote. Oh, do you have a question?
Did you pull one?
No.
This is on the consent. I would like to pull 3.
Oh.
Which one? Energy, 3.
3.
Okay. Please make item number 3 pulled. Please vote. We'll start with recognize employees who are eligible for journeyman certifications. What are we going to?
Good afternoon. My name is Rosie Trump, and I coordinate the apprenticeship programs here at IID, and I'll be handing out the certificates for the journeyman, their journeyman cards and their certificates. Before I do, I would like to add that these individuals have worked very hard for the last 4 years. The IID apprenticeship programs are each 48 months long. Not only that, each apprentice must attend 8 college-level classes, and they must pass them successfully. They also must attain 8,000 on-the-job training hours, and throughout the 4 years of the program, they are tested periodically. Now, excuse me, these programs are made possible by working in close association with the state of California, the Division of Apprenticeship Standards, and also with working very closely with our local educator agency, which is Imperial Valley College. With that, I'd like to call up our first employee, Lyman Journeyman John Alumetti. And John is not here. Lyman Journeyman Jorge Ortiz. Electrician Journeyman Jesus Guzman. Electrician Journeyman Andres Gil. Telecommunications Technician Journeyman Julio Perez. Mr. Perez is not here. Telecommunications Technician Jorge Vargas.
Thank you.
Relay Technician Journeyman Juan Favela. Mr. Favela's not here. Relay Technician Journeyman Marco Landeros. Marco Landeros is not here. And last but not least, Generation Mechanic Journeyman Victor Gonzalez.
We'll now present the service awards. This certificate of recognition and service pin replica of the district emblem are presented to Marco A. Mendez for 20 years of loyal and faithful service to the Imperial Irrigation District.
Thank you.
For 20 years of service, Joel Herrera, Engineer Assistant in the Energy Department. For 20 years of service, Antonio Martinez, Business Analyst 2 in the Energy Department. For 30 years of service, Antonio Corona, Hydro Operator 2 in the Energy Department. Is there anyone else here to receive a service award and you're on the list and I didn't call your name? Okay, that ends our service awards.
Kevin, did you want to do comments first?
Yes,
action item?
President Sanchez, members of the board, we'd recommend that you take the first action item out of order and do it now so that members of the Torres family don't have to stay for the duration.
All right, we're pulling action item number 10 to our first order of business, resolution remembrance Fernando Nene Torres.
Director Abadi, if you might start from the board comments.
Yes, I'm asking the board to adopt a resolution honoring Fernando Torres Nene for his time here as a community servant and a public servant. I knew Mr. Torres and his family for some time, and it's what he was. He was a community servant at different capacities. Some knew him as when he was mayor, when he was a police chief, or even at the planning commission, and even as his own capacities. He's for honoring the veterans of foreign wars. With his wife, Lily, head up to Farm Worker Appreciation breakfast every year. Whether it's community solar fields, public safety, or better service for our community. He was a community servant. And he's about as tough as they come. But it was his resolve and his common sense in these uncommon times that I believe moves this valley forward for the greater good for all. And Imperial Valley is a better place today because of Mr. Torres. And he will be greatly missed. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Abadi. Can I get a motion?
I move to adopt the resolution in honor of Fernando Nene Torres.
Second.
I have a first and a second. Please vote. Are we doing a photo?
Now, we'd ask the board to come down to the front again for a picture with the Torres family.
Confident and official advisor to countless local office holders and aspirants. Has left and joined the Mexican community in Imperial Valley and whereas Nene Torres was both a role model and a mentor to successive generations of candidates for elected office, a man whose life was a testament to the power of ideas and the efficiency of political action. And whereas Nene Torres was himself a future member of the Flexible City Council and the past mayor of the city, we held the firm conviction that one person can and does make a difference and set a common course for the future. And whereas Nene Torres' involvement in civic affairs was multifaceted, extended from the political arena to the educational, cultural, and economic spheres of community life, and whereas Nene Torres believed that the betterment of his beloved border city was best achieved through the direct involvement in the participation of its citizens, and that it is the duty of all public servants to place the needs of the many ahead of the few. Now therefore be it resolved that the Congregation District Board of Directors does hereby resolve that the life of Fernando Nene Torres was one of the merit and distinction, and that his enduring contributions to the community of Mexico and the Imperial Valley is worthy of commendation and tribute. Passed and adopted this day, 19th of October, 2010. Okay. We'll continue to comments from the board. Dr. Hanks.
I'd just like to make a couple of comments. One, ask that the the board had the opportunity to meet with our water attorneys again to follow up on our resolution number 2, 2010. That had to do with the appeal and the stay. And then I also asked the staff, and I believe legal has some information on a request on the American Disability Act. That would be it.
Director Minville?
Yes. The LA Times came out with an article yesterday dealing with Metropolitan Water District and the IID, and they made a statement in the article that said, without contacting his board of directors, Brady decided to send 41,250 acre-feet of water directly into the Salton Sea to help reduce its salinity and slow down the sea's overall decline. I just wanted to correct the record. That is not correct. Dr. Brady had spoken with the board on quite a few occasions, and staff have been working on this issue for between 6 and 8 months. So the IID board was well informed, and staff had worked on this and to work out the legal issues to make sure that what we were doing was correct with the 2003 QSA. And then also I wanted to, we received a letter here from Patrick Maloney, who represents the Imperial Group, and it has to do with IID putting water into the Salton Sea. And he writes to Lori Gray Lee and talks about, instead of focusing on whether the IID is able to or obligated to deliver water, including quantities and type, to the Salton Sea, our clients instead suggest that the fundamental underlying reality that IID remains incapable of appropriately managing its water be immediately addressed, as that is the common denominator in the QSA appeal. And basically what they're trying to say is that they're telling the federal government, as they've done before, that the IID is wasteful and incompetent. And they're saying this to the very people who claim that they have a right to take our water away from the Imperial Valley. Thank you.
I have no comment. Secretary Body?
No comment.
Director Mendoza?
No comment.
This is a public comment. Oh, I'll go to legal.
Yes, I know that Mr. Gonzalez has complained because there were some tables that had microphones on them, and I did have a chat with Mr. Gonzalez before the board meeting, and he indicated that the problem he has is he's unable to stand for more than 10 minutes, and occasionally if he has to speak to the board, he can't stand at the podium. And I told him that what I would recommend that we do is have another microphone available for people who are unable to stand at the podium, and he seemed satisfied with that. So I think that's the disability issue that Director Hanks referred to.
Thank you. Jeff. Kevin Kelly?
Yes, President Sanchez, members of the board, Dr. Brady is away on business today. There are a couple of items that he'd like for me to report on. The first is that he attended the large public power conference meeting this weekend, and tomorrow we'll be meeting in Phoenix with the Department of Interior, including Secretary Salazar, on Colorado River water issues. And the third is that the Finance Department has readied an energy cost adjustment presentation to make to the board, and we would recommend that occur during a special meeting, a public workshop, a week from today at 5 p.m. In this boardroom. That's it.
Thank you. This is time for public comment. This is a public meeting. You may address the board on items that are within the subject matter jurisdiction of IID, but not an item on the agenda. Those who wish to address the board should come forward with the microphone, state your name and address for the record.
Mr. President and the board, my name is Larry Grogan from El Centro, and I'd like to invite the board and anyone else. We have an open house, energy source, on the Thursday from noon to probably 2 o'clock, and there will be tacos as long as they last, and an open house over at 321 South Waterman, and this is where all the energy things are happening in the world. So I just thought I'd let you know. We have on the Friday, and also we have here a groundbreaking ceremony up at the site at McDonald and Davis. And there would be a bus available in the front of the county. That will occur somewhere around 10 a.m. We'll have representatives from the various Senate districts and Congressman Filner. So if you want, I'll just pass those down. And basically everyone's invited, and they'll also let you know not only are we proceeding with the first power plant, but we have now filed for the second power plant, and that is now going through the environmental process. And we are also engaged in a solar project. So there's quite a bit happening up there, and this is, we'd like to share it with anybody that is interested in finding out more.
Thank you, Larry.
Thank you.
Any other public comments?
My name's Oscar Gonzalez, ladies and gentlemen, board. I want to thank Mr. Carver and Anthony. I know I spoke to Anthony about a week ago regarding this issue. And this is the first time, Anthony, that you've agreed with me on something. And I want to thank the board members that agree with Mr. Garber. I know Mr. Abadi does, and Mr. Hanks, and I believe Mr. Manville does. But I want to thank the board for doing that, and for other people that may have trouble not only standing up, but I think the law says we have to make accommodations, but thank you for making that accommodation. In addition to that, I just briefly wanted to remind, and I told Mr. Hanks that he was wrong, that I remember, I can't think of the finance officer who stood up here and he said that they were going to discuss ECA the middle of October, and I think this is the middle of October, and Mr. Hanks said that it was in September, and maybe I'm in a different timeline, and maybe I was wrong, and I'd like to be corrected, but if I can't remember the name of the gentleman who's the finance, tall, slim guy. He said
Broken.
Huh?
Broken.
Yeah, that they were going to discuss that issue the 3rd or the middle of October, and we're at the 3rd, and I don't see it on the agenda.
It's coming next week.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay. Any other public comments?
Nope.
We'll move on forward to informational, governance, internal, auditing, general matters.
I have no comments. I can answer questions if you have any.
Got the consent.
I thought we did the consent agenda.
Just pull,
All right.
pull 3, but we didn't
All
vote
right,
on
we'll
it.
do the consent agenda. Please make, with the taking out of number 3.
Second.
There's a first and second, please vote. Okay. Mr. Kaiser had no comments. We'll move on to water general matters. Oh, does the board have any comments for Mr. Kaiser? We'll move on to water general matters.
I have nothing to report.
Does the board have any questions for water?
Yeah. Mr. Ross, the buoy on the buoys deal. What are the size of the buoys?
I think they're 24 inches.
Well, the general manager said they were 14 when I spoke with the board.
Then perhaps 14. I'm just going off the top of my head. I don't recall exactly.
Did you find that out?
Sure.
Any other comments from the board for your water? Move to energy general matters. Mario?
None to report.
Does the board have any questions for energy? Okay, we'll move on forward to item number 8, major work authorization, P6563 REIT El Centro Generating Station Deep Injection Wells Project.
Good afternoon.
waiting for this. Here it goes. See if I can. For information, I'm here to present the El Centro Generating Station Deep Injection Wells project. As a brief background to describe how we've got to where we are today, on July 1st of 2004, a new NPDES permit was issued to IID for the wastewater discharge at the El Centro Generating Station, with proposed stricter wastewater discharge requirements in compliance with the California toxics rule. In 2005, internally within the IID, efforts began to select a technology that will allow us to comply with the stricter wastewater discharge limits. In early 2006, after a thorough review and analysis, URS, who's a large environmental consulting firm, and that we elected to have them support us in this effort, recommended that IID pursue the deep injection well technology. In a to note, I guess, in a subsequent review by Navigant Consulting, they confirmed URS's original recommendation, and that subsequent review was done in early 2010. In late 2007, there was the move to actually construct the deep injection well project was substantially slowed due to the price of the project coming in about twice as what we had originally estimated. In 2008, efforts were undertaken to re-review and try to identify some additional alternatives for complying with the new stricter NPDES permits. And we looked at precipitation methods, ion exchange methods, and biological treatment methods to, again, reduce our wastewater limits to below the proposed new stricter NPDES limits. In May of 2009, IID was given a permit conditional extension. And that extension did two things. It established interim limits for our wastewater discharge and a compliance schedule. In June of 2009, IID received a new NPDES permit. Our NPDES permit's updated every 5 years. And the new stricter limits were in that new NPDES permit. In August 2009, we issued 2 requests for proposals to get updated pricing on the deep injection well solution. And at the request of the IID board, the following additional alternatives were considered during 2010, and that was include the city of El Centro and the city of Imperial taking our wastewater. That was looking at some technologies that Cal Energy is looking into to improve their water efficiencies at their power plants at the Salton Sea. It also included having Ormat's Heber plant take our wastewater. And we worked very aggressively and very closely with Crown Solutions. They're a subsidiary of Veolia. And Veolia is the largest wastewater wastewater treatment company in the world, on a customized solution. And none of these efforts got us to the point where we felt comfortable pursuing them any further. Today, we're to start discharging wastewater in compliance with our NPDES permit and our cease and desist order. And the El Centro Generating Station wastewater is required to comply with the current NPDES permit alone, or discontinue its discharge of wastewater by December of 2011. And that's where we're at today. Based on our, over the past year, several years of our efforts, we've come to the conclusion that the best way to address the more stringent California toxic rule requirements that are currently reflected in our NPDES permit is to eliminate the wastewater discharge into the central drain number 5. This approach is going to result in the El Centro Generating Station being a zero liquid discharge facility. And we have thoroughly reviewed and evaluated two basically solutions that would ultimately cause El Centro Generating Station to be a zero liquid discharge facility. And that's the deep injection well solution and the reverse osmosis system solution. What is a deep injection well? US EPA Class 1 wells are for injecting hazardous or non-hazardous waste into deep formations thousands of feet below the lowermost underground source of drinking water. More specifically, for the El Centro deep injection well permit, that injection zone will be between 2,700 and 3,600 feet below the surface. The design of this well is going to be very similar to the other injection wells at geothermal power plants throughout the valley. What is reverse osmosis system? The reverse osmosis is a filtration method that removes molecules and ions in water. I think RO is more commonly known for its drinking water purification. The wastewater system at the El Centro plant would consist of equipment and collection piping, a RO pretreatment equipment to pretreat the wastewater before it entered the RO equipment, and evaporation ponds. Basically, the RO system would result in two streams of water, a highly concentrated brine that would be discharged into an evaporation pond for evaporation on site, and the cleaned up water, which ultimately would be fed back into the cooling towers for reuse. We did a financial comparison between these two options. The project total cost, estimated project total cost for an RO system at the El Centro plant would be about $27 million. The project total cost, estimated cost for a deep injection well project is about $19 million. The levelized O&M cost for the RO system would be about $2.5 million for the RO solution, and the levelized annual O&M cost for the deep injection wells is going to be around $330,000 a year. That results in a net present value for the RO solution at a negative $33 million and a net present value of the deep injection wells a positive $14 million. There's issues with, or potential issues with, both of these solutions from a construction and operation standpoint. For the deep injection well, some of the issues would be the injection zone permeability may be lower than expected, or the injection well may not accept the levels of water that it's designed to. And on the following slide, we've got some mitigation measures to address some of these deep injection well issues. Another issue for the deep injection well system is the total dissolved solids at the target injection aquifer could be found to be less than the minimum required of 10,000 parts per million. Or finally, we could have potential sand control problems with the injection wells. For the reverse osmosis system, from a construction and operation perspective, the RO system has a significantly higher capital construction cost and significantly higher O&M costs relative to the deep injection well solution. It uses substantially higher. The RO system has a substantially higher higher auxiliary load, and it's just a much more complex system to operate, having substantially more equipment to maintain. And finally, again, the wastewater will require pretreatment before it enters the RO system. And we'll also have a sludge handling and disposal issue, a post-process sludge and disposal issue, probably or potentially the sludge being of a hazardous nature. A high-level cost-benefit analysis. The project has a payback of will have a payback of 19 years. However, the primary reason why we're recommending to proceed with the deep injection well is come into compliance, regulatory compliance. And as I mentioned earlier, the estimated cost of this deep injection well project is $18,786,000. Some of the mitigation measures to address some of the issues on the previous slide, starting with the injection zone permeability not being what we had designed for. The well's going to be designed to accept 850 GPM. Typically, however, the injection rate into that well will be half of that. It'll be designed for the peak load, but again, typically it'll be about half that. We'll have 2 wells. Each well will have 100% capacity, and we have an existing 1.5 million gallon tank. We're going to convert into a surge tank for the wastewater. Also, we have a third well that's in our permit that we currently hold. It's in the permit and it's not reflected in this MWA, but again, it is reflected in our permit if we needed to drill a third well. On the issue of the total dissolved solids being less than the required minimum of 10,000. If we did get into aquifer with less than 10,000 TDS, we could apply for an aquifer exemption and still use that aquifer to inject into it. The impact of the project would probably be a year or two to delay in actually getting it installed. Or we could potentially drill deeper to try to hit an aquifer with underground aquifer with a higher than 10,000 TDS. And then finally, on the sand control issues, we're constructing this well similar to other injection wells that the geothermal power plants are using here in the valley, and they've, I think, successfully used screens in controlling sand in the wells. And then, another option would be just to clean out the wells more frequently. We expect to have to clean them out about every 3 years. Again, a mitigation measure would be just cleaning them out more frequently. And then going back, we would have a redundant well in case if we had a problem with one of the wells. The project schedule. If the project is approved, we would expect to start drilling in January of 2011. After we prove out the well, we would begin the construction of the above-ground piping, collection system, and injection system in April of 2011. And we'd start compliance testing or injection testing in August 2011 and be in full compliance with all our regulatory permits in December of 2011. And is there any questions?
Does the board have any questions?
Henrik, on page 9, you've got the simple payback of 19 years has been determined for the investment. But how long will the well last? What's the life of it?
It's estimated to last 30 years, or the remaining life of the plan. And the net present values are based on that 30-year life.
Any other questions from the board?
I had a question on the funding. Did you want to handle that, Hendrick, or do you want Mr. Broking to?
I think Mr. Broking would be the more appropriate individual.
Do you want to tell us how we're going to pay for this?
We'll pay for it out of our cash reserves. as an alternative, we could possibly use our commercial paper program also. So either one of those will pay for it.
This isn't included in the bonds that we're looking at passing?
I don't believe it was part of the $250 million that we planned on issuing.
Greg, on the question that Director Hanks had, you have here under financial impact that it is expected that the funding source for this project will be from existing rates. So basically, you're going to take it out of reserves to pay for it, but then the
rates have paid for it.
That are coming in will cover it.
Right.
There's no need for increases or anything like that.
No, there's not a planned rate increase for this project.
Well, will this be a reason to raise increase in 2 years after you use your cash reserve this year?
We're not planning on having this as a reason why there's a need for a rate increase, but as you know, we're not able to borrow money right now, long-term money, so it remains to be seen how that will impact us on the long run.
Is there an opportunity to borrow the money after you use the cash reserves and we put the money back into the cash reserves and then pay out of existing rates? If you didn't use cash reserves, would you have to raise rates?
If we didn't, well, if we didn't use cash reserves and we didn't have access to borrowed money, then we may or may not have to raise rates to pay for this project.
Well, I'm very skeptical in raising rates in 2 years. At this point, you guys don't have my vote, so I'll be very cautious on how you spend your money. Does anybody else have any questions?
I guess I got one other question. Henrik, I know that Mr. Ajayan has come before us before and talked about this. This is the best way to go on a problem that we have out there, right?
We've been studying this issue for about 5 years, and I've got Mike Taylor and Jose and Wayne Lane, and there's just no good solutions. But again, it's a regulatory compliance issue for us, and
right.
we worked very aggressively with this Crowd Solutions, and I think over the past 2 or 3 meetings that Ed presented the information, that looked like it might solve the problem, and they were able to reduce the copper, the specific issues are copper and selenium. They were able, Crown was able to reduce the copper limits or discharge below our current limits, but they weren't able to reduce the selenium. So we had a solution, a lower cost solution, but it didn't solve the problem, or it didn't entirely solve the problem. As I stand here before you, I believe, based on everything we've looked at, and we've looked at quite a lot of different options here, this is the best long-term solution.
Okay. No, I know that we've talked about this, and City of El Centro, Imperial, Cal Energy, Ormat, none of those worked out. So.
Yeah, and there was other. We looked at different technologies where, again, this is a technology that, again, we will no longer discharge any water off the plant site. We looked at technologies where we could continue discharging off site with an NPDES permit, but nothing got this is, I guess, the levels of the pollutants down below our current limit, which are in the parts per billion realm.
Okay, thank you.
The casing is going to be carbon steel?
It'll be a carbon steel casing, yes.
And you believe that'll last for the 30 years?
And we hope to bring this back for approval at the November 2nd board meeting.
Does anybody else have any questions?
I just want to make a comment that this is something that we are mandated to do. This is not that we want to do it. It's something that we have to do in order to continue our business at the steam plant, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
So it's not, we're not doing this because we want to. Either we do this or we shut down the plant, correct? Is that what you're telling me?
The most likely scenario is if we don't do this, we'll start getting fines from the Regional Water Quality Control Board, and the fines will go back to ultimately we've got a cease and desist order actually that's allowing us to discharge above our current NPDES permit level, but it's an interim measure, and it only goes through December, or goes to December of 2011. And at that point in time, that's when we'll probably face stiff fines if we don't comply.
So having to go this route is the price of doing business.
Yes, ma'am.
Right.
Exactly.
And as far as increasing the rates, I think what's going to happen, Director Sanchez, is when we start bringing more of the renewable energy into our portfolio with geothermal, that's going to increase the power rates. Now, not so much something like this, but when we have to increase our portfolio with geothermal, you're going to see some spike in the rates, but not. I don't think this will.
Yeah, and if you were going to build a greenfield power plant today, it would most likely be a zero liquid discharge plant. If you're building a power plant today, all of these technologies are rolled into the cost of new construction, just because again the discharge limits are so stringent today.
Well, it doesn't.
They're at a level that you can't measure them. You know, most things we measure a parameter and we control to that parameter, but there's no in situ measuring techniques. What you have to do is you have to take a sample and you send it off, and in a lab they do the analysis, and 2 weeks later you find out what your limit. What your discharge was 2 weeks before, and that's the only way you can measure at the low levels we're talking about.
Director Hanks?
Yeah, I'd like to join in with Director Sanchez and his concern about this amount, and see what possibility we'd have in including that in the bond, future bond, with reimbursement back to our reserves.
And I guess that's a Greg.
We currently have a reimbursement agreement, reimbursement resolution in place, so that if and when we're able to issue long-term bonds, we can reimburse ourselves if we so choose for this project.
Okay, thank you.
We're not going to get in our audit. This isn't going to be one of the issues that we're going to be looked at, are we? Because I mean, the audit's this December, and it's going to take 2 years to build it.
Yeah, the audit is more of I guess a NERC type audit. This is a Regional Water Quality Control Board issue, so NERC's not really concerned about our environmental permit.
Hendrick, is this just for Unit 3 or is this for all the units?
This is for El Centro Generating Station only, all the units.
Okay, thank you.
At El Centro Generating Station.
All right, thank you. Moving on, number 9, partner.
So you'll bring this back for which meeting now? The
November 2nd.
Okay.
For approval. Thank
Partner
you.
with Clean Forest Project to
Thank you,
clean up
Hendrick.
Slab City.
Good afternoon. Michael Remington, Environmental Compliance Section. Clean Forest Projects was a nonprofit organization contacted me. They've worked with other resource conservation districts such as in Trinity County and Del Norte County to clean up illegal dump sites and obtaining grants through Cal Recycle. As you know, we're still doing cleanup. We'll start again in January for the illegal dumping on our properties through a grant with Cal Recycle. They wanted to partner with us because they identified the Slab City as an illegal dump site within your resource conservation district that would qualify for grant money to clean up. They will do all the cleanup once we're just essentially processing the paperwork for the grant.
and we'll get a 10% management fee for doing that for them. And if you have any questions.
Clean Forest Project, where are they from?
They're up north in Washington State.
Have you dealt with them before?
No.
No? Have you looked into their background? Have they done work here in the valley before?
No, they haven't done it in this Resource Conservation District, and I did look at some of the other areas they've worked
So
in.
they're credible? It's a credible organization?
As far as I can tell. They've obtained other grants through Cal Recycle like we have.
Mhm.
This will help us out potentially. If
Other
we,
sites.
Yeah, if right now we've cleaned up, I think, 6 of the 15 sites before we ran out of our matching grant budget. In January, we have until May to finish off that grant money, and I'm not sure we'll complete the rest of them in time. So potentially, once that grant ends, we may probably be able to use, Clean Forest has said that they would help us and probably do the same process, and potentially then as a resource conservation district, we wouldn't have to provide matching funds.
That's cool.
What is the parameters that you're calling Slab City?
Pardon?
What is the parameters that you're calling Slab City?
Well,
Railroad.
generally, I had real estate check on that area. It's actually 600 and something acres, which is state of California land. And Clean Forest will contact them to get their approval for this cleanup, because that's all state lands.
Okay, is it?
It's mainly all the area, including the slabs and where everybody's camping and all the trash they've been piling up there for years.
Well, I was hoping it could be from the railroad tracks north.
Well, I'm not sure it covers that area.
that
But he's
was-
gonna, the representative
lot
from
of-
Clean Forest is gonna be here November 2nd and 3rd to, once again, go over that site and do a reconnaissance to identify contractors to do the cleanup and everything else. So he'll probably identify the exact limits of where they're gonna clean up.
Yeah, because there's IID has a lot of ground in that area, a lot of old dump sites or areas where it's been dumped on, particularly around the Peaker plant, and then also along the Highline Canal and the Coachella Branch. The slab, you have the state land, but the camping in that area extends for miles up to Coachella too.
Well, when he comes back here for the reconnaissance, I'll go with him and we can take a look at some of those lands too and see if they can fit within this cleanup.
Do we face any liability on this? There has been arsenal found in that area, general area.
Well, in order to use the grant money for the cleanup, just like our cleanups, you have to identify how you're going to identify any hazardous or lethal compounds out there, and then you have to dispose of them properly.
And we haven't seen all the grant documents yet, but we'll look at them. And obviously, if there's some issues, we may decide that we can't do it. But until we see all that documentation, we don't know what the grant requirements are.
Because part of that slab area was there's ammunition dump sites. Some of them still exist, but I don't know as far as how well it's been cleaned up over the years.
Yeah. The only Department of Defense cleanups on IID property that have been proposed are based on the old bombing sites in the Salton Sea and around the perimeter of the Salton Sea. They haven't identified anything, even for this county, anything out there at Slab City in which they want to clean up. So, I don't know.
Okay.
Has the Clean Forest Project, have they ever worked with an area like Slab City before? Do they know what they're getting into?
Oh, yeah, they've already been out and looked at it.
And they still want to do that?
Yes.
Well, more power to them then.
Okay.
Cool.
This is what a lot of resource conservation districts fine. And they're just historic places and continue on where people have been dumping. And the Resource Conservation Districts statewide don't have the money to clean these up. So this is the process they go through this nonprofit in order to get the grant money.
Are they going to be looking at Salvation Mountain, Mount Leonard Salvation Mountain? They're not going to tear that down, are
no, they? No.
Okay.
Go on.
Mike, do they have any idea how much trash there is to pick up out there? Just a rough idea when they looked at it?
I don't recall them mentioning the amount that they think is out there.
The reason I asked, they say they picked up 400,000 pounds, which is 200 tons, which is like 8 truckloads, 25,000 to a truckload. But that's in 3 different areas, I mean, over the last 3 years. So where does the county fit in on this thing? Because the county is responsible for Slab City, aren't they?
Well, like a lot of things, yeah, because it's on state property, on a lot of other things that we've had issues with and the county has had with the state, you can try to cite the state and get them to clean it up, but they're not going to, you'll be trying for several years to get any kind of response.
Yeah, but they came to the district because we're a resource conservation district. Is that the reason why?
Right.
And we just get reimbursed for administrative work, the 7%.
Right.
So it's no money out of our pocket.
Right.
And basically we're helping clean the area up because of our situation.
Right.
Our proximity with the Highland Canal to it, I would think it would be some benefits besides administration fees to us.
Yeah, and as a conservation district, any material that's there, whether it's if they've been dumping oil and everything else and containers of all kinds of compounds, eventually during storm events, that stuff is going to run either into our canal or into the Salton Sea. So as a resource conservation district, this benefits us to keep the pollution down.
Personally, I'd like to see you bring it back to us.
Okay, the November 9th, is it, board meeting?
November 2nd.
Second, I'll be bringing the resolution that we have to submit to the Cal Recycle in order to apply for the grant.
Thank you.
Okay?
Thank you, Mike.
Move on to item number 11, resolution in opposition to Proposition 23, also known as cap and trade.
Yes, President Sanchez, members of the board, this item came up last week, and the board did act to adopt a position of neutrality. We're bringing it back at the request of a couple of board members, and I just want to provide this background to you before you take it up anew. Proposition 23 would roll back some of the emissions mandates associated with Assembly Bill 32. AB 32 is already law. You are not necessarily embracing AB 32 in voting to oppose Proposition 23. There are competing interests at play here. AB 32 does have stringent emissions requirements that ramp up over time. Several business organizations in the state and locally are in opposition to AB 32 and have been since its inception. For IID's purposes, Proposition 23, if it were to pass, and if those emissions standards were to be rolled back, management believes that it would have a chilling effect on the growth and development of the renewable energy industry locally. And that's across the board. It isn't just solar or just wind or even just geothermal. What has driven the renewable portfolio standards in California has been the emissions standards that were ushered in as a result of AB 32. So we would ask, management would ask that you reconsider your position of neutrality, and for purely parochial, local economic reasons, adopt an opposed position to Proposition 23.
I move to adopt the attached resolution in opposition to Proposition 23.
I'll second it.
There's a first and a second. If this fails, I'd like to
I've got a couple
put another
questions.
motion for neutrality
Wait
again.
a minute, hold on, we just gotta.
I know, I'm discussing it.
Well, hold on.
Director Hanks?
Okay, AB 32, if Prop 23 fails, then the requirement of 33% renewable stands. What is going to be the impacts on our ratepayers if that goes through? What's the estimate?
Proposition 23, if it were to pass, would suspend the more stringent emission standards for a period of, I believe it's 5 consecutive quarters, or until the economy shows positive growth over that same time span. The 33% RPS standards would remain in effect, but they would be gutted by the emissions standards, the corresponding emissions standards not being in place. So what you'd end up with is the incentive that now exists for renewable energy developers to move forward with their projects, especially locally, would be effectively removed. Now, it could come back as a function of a more robust economy, but if Proposition 23 were to pass, as I understand it, you would see harm done to the renewable sector.
And likewise, we have existing business that's going to suffer, ratepayers
That is
are
true.
going to suffer.
The emissions standards that are part of AB 32 are believed to be an impediment to California's business climate. I will add that the two gubernatorial hopefuls and the sitting governor are all opposed to Proposition 23.
The other issue remaining is if we're going to take full advantage of renewable energies here, we're going to have to do something about transmission out of here.
Director Hanks is correct that is a, no matter what you do with the proposition, your transmission situation is a larger concern.
Now this, what about our 1990 requirements on our emission levels? As far as bringing our greenhouse gases back to 1990 levels, that's separate, right?
It is, and as you know, Director Abadi, a lot of the decisions that have been made within the Energy Department in terms of its own integrated resource plan and having to do specifically with the El Centro generating station have been largely influenced by the emissions reductions that IID can realize by the changes that we're making at the steam plant, the new technology that we're installing.
Again, my position is I believe we need allow the people to vote on which jobs they wish to choose to moving forward. I know I have neighbors who have 1 or 2 semi-trucks who, if they had to retrofit their engines every 2 years, they'd go out of business. So I think we should continue with the neutrality and allow the people of California to vote on which jobs they choose that they want to go forward. So we have a motion and a second. Please vote. Do I have a motion for neutrality?
That's already been passed.
You don't even have to make a motion. That exists already.
I would recommend we move to the next item.
Moving on to item 12, rescind energy rate schedule DEA residential energy assistance.
In September 2008, the board made changes to the residential energy assistance program. At the time those changes were made, there was an existing rate schedule that should have been eliminated because it was no longer valid based on the new program that the board had approved. So what we're asking today is to eliminate that rate schedule. It's D-EEA, Residential Energy Assistance. There's no one currently on that, there's no customers on that rate schedule, and there are no plans to put any customers on that rate schedule. So we're hoping to just to get it off our books and continue to follow the Residential Energy Assistance Program that the board approved in September 2008.
Let me see if I get this right. It's my understanding, had we left it where it was originally, back in September of 2008, the charge on our energy bill on public benefits would have gone from 2.85 to 5.77%, or increase over 100% in the public benefits. That's why we changed it. And so what you're asking is, we've already made the change, and are you then just asking us just to remove this off of the chart?
Yes, out of our rate schedule. Yeah, the change has already been made. And so what's on the books is really the old program, not the current program. And so since there's no one on that schedule, there's really no need for it to
So it's
be,
just for cleanup purposes?
It's cleanup purposes.
Okay. I'd also like to see us do that on some of our bonds that we pass that are not moving forward, or, just bring it back, and then if we need to redo it, just kind of clean it up so we know where we're at on all these issues.
Questions? For item number 12, can I get a motion?
Move for approval.
There's a first.
Second.
There's a second. Please vote. Now, there's a consent item that was pulled. There's item 3, energy approval of amendment number 1 to service agreement with Kima Inc.
I asked to have this one pulled. These are business cases on transmission lines. We had, was updated in the informational meeting, had more discussion on this. Again, becomes apparent that we're going to do some layoffs, so we have too many people, but we're willing to pay a consultant instead of teaching and training like we were supposed to. By building depth in the company, we become more reliant on consultants. And we should be training ourselves, because this is something we're going to continue to do in the future. So we ought to be putting some basis and some foundation down in this organization. And I'm at the position, I feel the only way to do that, since they're not moving to train, is just don't allow it and force them to train themselves. So I'll be voting no on this. Though I do know Kima is a very big and well-respected company. They do fantastic work, but sometimes we have to take ownership for this stuff.
Are there any other questions?
Yeah. Do we have anyone here that can give us some insight from staff?
We're surrounded by doctors. It shouldn't be that hard.
Okay, he's gone too.
Dr. Sandoval.
Good afternoon. Yeah, I'm requesting the service agreement. We have been putting a lot of major work authorizations. We have about 12 MWAs pending for the next projects in the next couple of years. These documents require a special skill set. We are developing these skill sets in-house, but right now we don't have it available. Our staff is right now focused on interconnection of all these renewable resources. Again, I'm short-handed, and this is helping me to cope with this short-handing.
Carlos, this transmission plan is 6 years old. You knew these things were coming forward. And it's always going to be, well, we'll start next year. We're working on something else. This is not just that it happened this year or last year, the year before. It's been here before I was on the board.
I have been putting a lot of these documents myself, but again, my time is short. Focusing on a lot of all the issues. I'm directing this consultant to help me. I'm telling him what to do. It's just assistance in order to avoid having these projects to be delayed because we are relying on this project for reliability. So I'm trying to get it moved forward as soon as possible. And again, I don't have right now the skill sets in-house, to do this work. Since the senior staff is like other senior staff that have been doing this work, is focusing right now on NERC compliance and some other areas, so it's not available at this time.
Are there any other questions?
I'll move for approval.
I've got a motion.
I think we have don't we have a second?
There's a second. Please vote. All right, meeting adjourned.
Yeah, I got one more.